Okay. Hey, I'm Mitchell Wojcik, photographer, director guy, and I just finished up a tour with Hellogoodbye, and this is the nightlife. So I just got off a tour with Hellogoodbye. They were opening up for Paramore on the self-titled tour on this leg. From what I've heard and what I looked up and researched, that the self-titled tour has actually gone for 320 days. It was super different from everything else that I've been on. Being in an arena is much different than being in a small club, small venue. The vibe of the tour was just very different. Like every night I was hanging out with like the band, you know, the guys in Hellogoodbye, but it was just us. We had our nights, like we'd see each other, you know, at the bus call, or we'd, you know, have a cigarette together, or have like a small drink and kind of like hang for a teeny bit, but then go back to our own respective rooms or our own respective bus, versus, you know, van tours in general, and just hanging out with the bands real hard and making 20 new friends on a tour versus making 2 or 3. A completely different experience. You go to a show and you're like, oh man, 200 kids in this tiny venue that's packed, and then you go to an arena and you see 8,000 people, and you're like, oh man, it feels so empty in here. It's like going to, you know, the Metro and seeing it half full. It's crazy. So I'm a photographer first and foremost, I guess. I photograph a lot of bands, people, things for magazines, that sort of stuff. I do a lot of lookbooks for some clothing lines. And then with these tours that I go on, I shoot a lot of video. When I was in high school, I started out shooting videos for local bands. When I was going to college, I was deciding, you know, I think I'm going to just do video. I got to college. I was like, I like photography way better. So it's kind of weird how now I'm going on tour and not shooting as many photos. You know, I started from that directing music videos. In the past years I've shot, you know, the last few Wonder Years music videos. Recently I directed Owen's Bad Blood with my friend Sam, and we also took on a Great Big Pile of Leaves video for Snack Attack.
Like,
what's your craziest tour story? What's your craziest tour story? There is no crazy tour story. It's just it has to, the right people got to be present for me to be like, oh yeah, you remember that? You remember that? That time in Texas? Like, oh, it was like no one was there, and then it was like this weird nightclub afterwards. There was no stall. Like there was just a toilet in the middle of the bathroom, and that's how you had to take a shit. Like, and then I sat there and took a shit, and you just watched me take a shit, and we had a conversation. Like, oh man, that was so funny. But no one's gonna find that funny.
Is that a thing that actually happened?
Yeah. But it's like, it's not a thing, like, I don't know, they're not as fun or as funny as when it's like, what's your craziest tour story? I hate that. But I think like the thing that sticks with me the most, and a lot of people are like, oh man, what's like that like end all be all of like definitive moments of like touring or like this lifestyle that you lead. And I always look back and I think about, it was like I just moved to California and just going to hardcore shows all the time, and I made all these friends that were in hardcore bands, and I was doing a bunch of work with Trash Talk. Lee, the singer, hit me up and he's like, hey man, like we're gonna put out these books. We're gonna do a volume of them. And Lee asked me for some photos, and I sent him like 5 different things, and they printed them in a book. That was the first time I'd ever seen anything published in like a mass printed book. I went home for the first time after my grandma died, and my grandfather was in the hospital, and basically at that point he was on his deathbed. When I moved to California, he said he was very happy for me to go, and he was excited, and he's like, you're gonna have such a great time, you're gonna learn a lot about yourself. And I came home, and we were sitting in the hospital, and it was the first night I was back, and I was like, Grandpa, I have something to show you. And he looked at the book, and he looked at everything in the book, and it might not have been his speed, given what it is, but he looked at it, he was super tearful, and he was really happy, and he looked at me, and he just said, Mitchell, I'm proud of you. And this is the thing that sticks with me most, because that's the last time I ever spoke to my grandfather. I mean, I was upset, obviously, but I'll always have that. And that forever is going to be one of the definitive things that's, what's your coolest tour story, or what's your, like, what have you done that means the most to you? And it's not even like the fact that I've done album artworks for countless bands, or like, a book or a magazine or anything like that. It's the fact that I got to do something, and one of my favorite people in the world got to see it before he died, and that's the coolest thing. Hey, I'm Mitchell Wojcik. I'm a photographer, director guy, and that's kind of the nightlife.